have 3-year-old twins and I have 16-month-old twins, and so there's a lot of stuff that we can relate on. And just believe me, before I had my babies, I met them and I was asking DJ and his wife a lot of questions, and I still have a lot of questions. But anyway, hey, I'm excited about this morning. Last night we talked about the reality that a lot of us in this room, we carry our damages. We carry the reality that we're broken, and even though when we're broken and we all walk with a limp, there's not a Christian in this world that doesn't walk with a limp. If you read the Bible, and I want you to know this, and adults and leaders and students, I want you to lean into this. I think too many times, especially us Americans, we think Christians are supposed to be perfect. We're supposed to always be strong, always have it together, always be professional and presentable. And I call foul on that. You know why? Because there's not one person in the Bible that ever actually did that. And it doesn't mean that we're not supposed to have a joy and a strength that points to someone greater. It doesn't mean that we're not supposed to come across as confident. I think Christians should be the most confident people in the world. But you can be confident and you can be courageous while also still broken. And even when Jesus delivers you, you will be walking with a limp until you go to heaven. Because what happens is Jesus does not perfect you yet until you get to heaven, until you're in glory. So students, I want you to understand this. This morning, as we continue on in this journey of finding our identity in Jesus, understand that the story we're about to go into, as we kind of look at the history of it, but you're about to see a man who we have talked about for years, and a man that we've looked up to for years in God's word. You're about to see a man that in the moment that he was chosen to become God's anointed king, that at one point he was overlooked. But before we go there, I want to tell y'all a quick story. So when I was in the 8th grade, when I was in 7th grade, I started playing basketball. Fell in love with basketball in 7th grade. I would go play street ball. I was living in Texas at the time, and I would get off the bus. I would go up the road, play street ball for about 3 or 4 hours, get home. When I was in 8th grade, we moved back to Louisiana to live. I went to live with my dad. And I remember, man, I was a scrappy young basketball player. Like, I had a goal. I would watch Pistol Pete Maravich videos. Most of you know who Pistol Pete Maravich is. If you don't, he is probably the greatest college basketball player of all time. And I would watch his videos. I would try to go to the court and perfect his moves. And legitimately, I wanted to be like him. Now, when I was in 8th grade, I wasn't that good. My shot wasn't that great, but I was a hustler. I was scrappy. And so when I was in 8th grade, the varsity coach asked me to come up and practice with the varsity. And my brother was a junior at the time. And so my brother was already on the varsity team. And if you have younger siblings in here, and they were ever put on the same team as you or in the same friend group as you, you probably were like, this is not going to be good. And my brother and I had a very complicated relationship. We were close, but we were also fighters because my parents divorced when I was 4 years old, and we were divided sometimes, and sometimes we would be with my mom, other times we'd be with my dad, other times we would split. It's just a crazy relationship, but we still had that sibling rivalry. So when we played basketball, every time we would have practice, as the youngest guy on the court, I was already intimidated enough. However, I wanted to play. I wanted to get out there and show them what I had, even though I was terrible. So anyway, I showed up, and every practice for about an hour, we would scrimmage. But there was this one guy, this one captain. He was a senior at the time. And this dude, I mean, he reeked of arrogance. Like, when he walked, you're like, dude, you smell like jerk. And so anyway, and so for me, I'm the 8th grader. I want to play. I'm up on the front line like, pick me, right? I mean, I was probably about 5'8", 5'9" at the time, 130 pounds soaking wet. Like, just thin. I was very quick, but I probably my feet were always big. Like, I wear a size 13. I know guys 4 inches taller than me that don't wear 13. I look like I was wearing skis. And so I'm sitting there like on the front of the corner, like, who's going to pick this little 8th grader? But constantly throughout the practice, Jonathan Taylor would come up to me and say, hey, bro, I just want you to know, don't expect to play today. What a jerk. I wanted to punch him in his earlobe. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to play today? What do you mean? Why are you being such a bully? So anyway, so he would tell me that throughout practice, but I was like, all right, whatever, I'm going to play. But in 8th grade, I still smelt of insecurity. I was still like, okay, nobody wants me out of here. I get that. I'm on the front line still doing it, and all of a sudden, I feel somebody tug on my jersey, and I'm like, what is going on? I'm pulled to the very back of the line, and I'm like, what in the heck? So I look to my left, and this dude's only like 5'5". He's a little scrawny little dude. I probably could have beat him up. But anyway, he pulls me to the back. I look over, and he just walks off. And like I said, I wanted to throw a basketball at his face, mess up his little pretty little grin because he was Mr. Popular. And in that moment, one thing that I felt that triggered me for most of my life, the one moment that I felt like he didn't believe in me, my brother didn't believe in me, only the coach brought me up, but everybody was like, this guy's not going to get in, this guy's nothing. You know the one word I felt? I felt overlooked. Like many of you in this room right now, you might feel overlooked. Maybe you have a sibling that is succeeding in all these ways and you feel like nobody sees your talent. Maybe you're in this room right now and you feel like maybe you're in the same scenario as me. You're hustling, you're busting your tail, you're trying to be something, but the coaches overlook you and you're like, man, I feel like I'm not getting any observation. You feel overlooked. Maybe you're in this room right now. Maybe you're one of a lot of siblings and you just feel like you're the one that's not as loved. Maybe you're in a friend group and the crew that you follow demands you to be somebody else because you're not worthy of who you are right now. And you feel overlooked. Just like I did when I was in the 8th grade trying to play varsity. I want to show you today a text that I truly believed that when you see the label that you've given yourself and others have given you about being overlooked in a world that is all about status, that is all about popularity, that's all about influencers. You know that your generation, y'all will, like guys, like right now in the last few years, like the fit industry is crazy. Somebody will get online, their veins are popping out of their neck and their biceps that have biceps, and you will be like, I can do that? And they're like, all you got to do is do these reps, go to the gym, and like David Goggins, you gotta be hard, right? And then girls, you'll watch some fit model go like, yay, do these things, right? And they're fit and they're benching more than guys. You're like, I want to do that. And you will simply do that because that's what everybody's doing. Because you want status, because you want to be like that. And what we'll do is we'll look at trends and we will follow them because we want to be seen. Y'all, influencer in this day and age means you got to have a following. If you don't have more than 10 likes on a post, take it down. And you are being fed the lie that you have to have a platform to be a good person. You are. We have all been fed the lie that if millions of people are not following you, you're not good enough. And media, we have a lot to blame them for. So let's go to the Bible real quick. Let's open up the Word. Let's get in the Word real quick. Oh, go ahead and put your Bibles up in the air. And we're going to say Word on 3. Say it loud. Say it proud. Man, y'all are killing it this morning on Out of the Grave. It's going to be great. I think that's not what the song's called. What's it called? I ran out of that grave. What's it called? Glorious day. My bad. I feel like they don't even say that much in the song. They just say, let's run, get out of the grave. Anyway, on 3, say Word. 1, 2, 3. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 16. 1 Samuel chapter 16. We'll be in verses 1 through 13. And I'm excited about 1 Samuel. It's in the Old Testament. If you need, man, go to the index at the front of your Bible. I realize sometimes we're taught at church and VBS, like if you don't know where the books of the Bible are, you're not a Christian. If you can't spell it with your body, look, you know how I learned where the books of the Bible are? I just went to the index and looked at the page number. That's how I found out where the books of the Bible are. That's how I know. All right, so that's okay. Whoever condemns you for going to do that, well, then just tell them you're not a Christian. You're judging me. Anyway, but if you can go to the index, 1 Samuel, it's in the Old Testament. I had a student the other day, felt so bad because I asked him to turn to Psalms and he went to the New Testament. He goes, I can't believe I thought it was the New Testament. Bro, it's okay. It's okay. Just go to the index. It's all right. 1 Samuel chapter 16. It'll be on the screen as well if you need that for reference. And before I get rolling, I want to set the stage for you. Y'all know who King David is? Y'all know David, the man that he didn't name himself this. Scholars named him the man after God's own heart. Paul called him this even in the New Testament. But before there was David, there was a guy named Saul. Not to be confused with New Testament Saul. This was King Saul, where the people of Israel, God's people, wanted a physical king. And they pleaded with God, we want a king, we want a king. And so God's like, all right, I'm going to leave you up to your devices. So they choose Saul. And Saul is about head and shoulders taller than everybody else. He's a good-looking guy. He's a warrior. He's charismatic. But the problem with Saul is he's a people pleaser. Saul was not in it for the right reasons. And the people of God, I want you to hear this, and this is very, very relative. The people of God could care less about someone's character. They just wanted somebody to lead. And y'all need to understand something, students, and y'all are seeing it in this generation, and everybody in this room needs to hear this right now. Y'all know why pastors are falling? Y'all know why people are cleaning up their mess behind them? Do you know why leaders in this industry are being outed? It's because for 20 years, people said his talent is more important than his character. And you need to understand something. Saul's talent to his people were more important than his character. And so understand, Saul is a guy who legitimately, he was insecure. At later on, when David would become king, Saul tried to kill this dude like 3 times. David would be up there playing the harp and the flute, right? And he would take a spear and chunk it. Like, I find it so hilarious. David's just up there playing the harp. And a spear, right? Like, dude almost got taken out 3 or 4 times. Saul was an insecure leader. Saul, he was a king that God gave his people. He was the kind of king that did what he wanted. He was the kind of king that, he was the guy that should have led the nation, but then eventually would be told by God through Samuel, I have rejected you as king. And in verse 1 of chapter 16, here's what he says to Samuel. Y'all ready for this? Da-na-na. All right, verse 1. The Lord said to Samuel, Samuel is the prophet. He's one of the last ones of this time. How long are you going to mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king of Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem because I've selected for myself a king from his sons. Samuel asked, how can I go? Saul will hear about it and kill me. Once again, those kings were ruthless. And that's the thing about kings are, they were so insecure, they would just kill you. They're just like, this guy's trying to take over my throne. This guy's going behind my back. Verse 3, then invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will let you know what you are to do. You are to anoint for me the one I indicate to you. And Samuel did what the Lord directed and went to Bethlehem. And when the elders of the town met, they trembled and asked, do you come in peace? Verse 5, in peace I've come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves. Come with me to the sacrifice. And then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. In verse 6, when they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and said, certainly the Lord's anointed one is before me. Now, students, I want you to look up here. Here's what's crazy. Samuel has seen Saul, and he had a picture in his mind of who's supposed to be the leader based off this picture of who Saul was. All the sons of Jesse were legitimately these like probably Greek-looking goddess. They're the ones like Fabio posing in the mirror after one workout and having washboard abs. These guys were like the cream of the crop. And Samuel said, surely this is where the anointed is. But then check this out. Verse 7, a pivotal verse in Scripture. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or stature, because I have rejected him. Humans do not see what the Lord sees, for humans see what is visible, but the Lord sees the heart. I got a few principles I want you to write down when it comes to being from going overlooked to being chosen. And number 1 is this. Write this down. I believe note takers are change makers, and when you write it down, you're more inclined to walk it out. So I want you to take some notes this morning. I want these principles to really stick in your head and stick in your heart, and I want you to go back to it when you're feeling insecure about some things. But here's number 1. Number 1 is this. Appearance doesn't reveal what people are really like or what their value is. I want to say that again for the people in the back. Appearance doesn't reveal what people are really like or what their value is. Appearance doesn't reveal what people are really like or what their value is. If you look back in the text real quick, look at verse 6 and let's look at verse 7. Once again, Samuel shows up. He sees Eliab. Certainly the Lord's anointed one is here before him. Verse 7. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or his stature, because I've rejected him. Humans do not see what the Lord sees, for humans see what is visible, but the Lord sees the heart. Students, what we need to understand when it comes to appearance is just because someone dresses a certain way, it does not give you or myself the right to assume we know that person. Stereotypes in this world are crazy, y'all. Look at me. I'm wearing a backwards hat preaching in the church. One of the things that I want you to understand about when it comes to Christianity, especially us Americans, we have this picture perfect of what a pastor should look like. They should be trimmed. They should be presentable. They should be professional. They should wear a suit and a tie that is so uncomfortable it might as well be a straitjacket. And I'm going to be real. The reason I wrote my book, Labels, the reason I preach this about being overlooked is because I've always enjoyed not being the stereotype. I do not care what you want me to be. I care what God sees in me and who he's called me to be. And students, I want you to hear this. I remember I'll go get haircuts sometimes, and they're like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a pastor. What? You're a pastor? You wear sneakers. You got a flat bill on. I'm like, and? He goes, well, most people that wear that are, whoa. You're saying that you're judging me by my appearance. You're saying I'm supposed to meet some stereotype. Students, look at me. I don't wear this to be cool. I wear this because I'm comfortable and I've got OCDness about matching. And I want you to know, like, this is me. And you come argue me all, you blue in the face. There's not a verse in the Bible that says, you have to dress like this. You can't wear a hat. And students, for you in this room right now, you feel like you've been stereotyped. Some of you think you fit into a specific category that God never put you in the first place. David is being overlooked because his brothers are more handsome, they're bigger, they're better, and yet God says, you're looking at the image. By the way, students, and I forgot who originally said this, y'all realize when you're looking at Instagram, the people, and even for my parents in the room, when you're looking at the way other people are living, when you see those influencers, when you see the person that's in your class and you think that their social media is portraying them as this perfect saint, you are comparing, like I said, I don't remember who said this, you are comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. You are looking at what nobody ever posts about how broken they are. They always post about what's great. Literally, as a twin dad, when I see people post, I'm like, man, I bet their babies are sleeping. I have no idea. And students, you are legitimately looking at a falsified version of somebody on social media, but appearance doesn't reveal what people are really like or what their value is. I don't care how suited up or professional a pastor looks. There's also been a lot of suited up professional pastors who fall into moral failure. So you can't tell by looking at somebody, I don't care how intuitive you are. You cannot tell what people are like based on how they look. I'm sorry, you're wrong. Because y'all realize Jesus was a Jew, right? Y'all know he wasn't a white boy with blonde hair and blue eyes. I want you to know, if Jesus walked through those doors right now, most of us would not give him a look. Because the book of Isaiah said his appearance was not to be seen as beautiful. The reason I say that is because when it comes to appearance, it doesn't tell the whole story. So students, I want you to hear this. Appearance doesn't reveal what people are really like or what their value is. God sees the heart. And look at me. He sees you. Even when people perceive you as different. Even when people don't understand your personality. Hey, God still sees your heart. He still sees you. Maybe you posted a photo of an inspirational quote and something motivating and people overlooked it. And you're deciding, I'm not good looking enough. I'm not pretty enough. So you say, man, I guess I'm taking this down, but nobody can see your true heart on social media. Maybe you're on the team, coaches and players wonder if they're tall enough, strong enough, play it even though they've been working hard all year, but they don't understand the value and discipline you're putting behind the scenes. You crave to be authentically you, but the crew that you want to be a part of expects you to be someone else. You're not worthy unless you change. Once again, I want you to hear this. The Lord sees you and he knows your heart. He sees you and he knows your heart. Here's number 2. Write this down. And this is a good mantra for you. This is a good anthem for you. Put this on your mirror, put it in your notebook, and preach it to yourself. Number 2, God's approval is greater than man's approval. Y'all hear that? God's approval is greater than man's approval. God's approval is greater than man's approval. Let's look back at verse 8, and we're going to read through verse 12. If you're there, you can say word. If you're there, you can say word. Let's get it. Verse 8. Jesse called Abinab. Sorry, as much as I preach the Bible, sometimes I butcher names, but here's the deal, just own it. Had presented him to Samuel. The Lord hasn't chosen this one either. Then Jesse presented Shammah, and Samuel said, the Lord hasn't chosen this one either. After Jesse presented even 7 of his sons to him, Samuel told Jesse, the Lord hasn't chosen any of these. And Samuel asked him, these all the sons you have? Here we go. They're still the youngest, but right now he's tending sheep. So David was a shepherd boy. Send for him. We won't sit down to eat until he gets here. So people are going to be hangry unless David shows up. So Jesse sent for him, and he had beautiful eyes and a healthy, handsome appearance. And then the Lord said, anoint him, for he is the one. You see, even though David was a good-looking guy, even though David was a shepherd, and all his brothers and his dad Saul was a shepherd boy, David was overlooked. But here's the deal. God's approval is better than man's approval, because Samuel sent Jesse to go get David. David is tending the sheep. He's not even in the scene. And God says, this is who I want, because I choose him. Students, any of y'all ever seen, I love this analogy I got from J.D. Greer off of Right Now Media video. Have any of y'all seen American Idol? Anybody seen, like, America's Got Talent? So in American Idol and America's Got Talent, it really is a superficial thing. When people walk on the stage, they're immediately already judging the singer. But how many of y'all seen The Voice? So The Voice is a show where the judges are not even looking at the stage. And they're not looking at the stage, and then singers would come up and they would sing, and there's 4 judges, and basically when you hit the red button, the judge would turn around because they're interested in the singer. If none of the judges turned around, you're eliminated. Students, I want you to know this. Before you ever did one thing, before you ever spoke a word, before you were born, God hit the red button and chose you. I want you to know that when my twins were born on November 17, 2022, I want you to hear this, because I was bawling my eyes out on the way over here drinking my Starbucks coffee, because I was looking at pics of my babies. And as hard as it is to raise those guys, y'all, I have not sobbed that hard in a while. I was like, my eyes are so red, people are going to think I'm like on drugs or something. And I walk in, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I was, here's why, because I love my babies. And here's the deal. When my boys were born, all they did was cry and use the bathroom and not sleep. There's not one thing those babies have done to earn my love. I just loved them. And there's not one thing, no matter how broken your home might be, no matter how much some of you guys have tried to earn approval of a mentor, I want you to hear this. He already knows you're a broken soul because of sin, but he still sees that soul and says, that's mine. God's approval is greater than man's approval. Because here's the deal, students. Y'all's anxiety skyrockets when you sit and legitimately ruminate on what others people think of you. And I want you to know, you teenagers in this room, there are things you care about right now that I guarantee you in 10 years you will never care about. You will never care that you went to prom or homecoming unless it's with your high school sweetheart boo thing. You will never care, guys, that you gave a promposal to the girl of your dreams, especially if your marriage proposal does not top that. Listen, you in this room right now, there are things right now you think you care about that you're being driven by because you've decided that man's approval is greater than anybody else's approval. But as I said last night, God's the author of your story. But I love what Lecrae says. He says this has been a verse or a quote that I've been trying to live by. I am not by no means perfect in it, but I want you to write this down. If you live for people's acceptance, you'll die from their rejection. Meaning this. Oh, I'm just going to say it again so you can write it down. If you live for people's acceptance, you'll die from their rejection. In other words, students, and I want you to hear this. I want you to look at me. Have you ever been in this moment where somebody encourages you or somebody approves of you or somebody says, atta boy, atta girl, and you walk away just feeling like you're 10 feet taller? Y'all ever walk away from an encouragement? Y'all, my love language is words of affirmation. So for me, I can go 4 weeks on a good compliment. You know what my problem is? Let's say I preach a lot, whether that's Sunday morning, Sunday night, when I travel, and I could get 99 compliments, and I could get one critic. Who do you think I'm listening to? Why? Because in the moment of the approval, I'm on top of the world. And then one moment somebody criticizes me, I'm deflated. I've gotten better at that over time. But I want y'all to know, it's still a struggle. I want y'all to know that if you live for people's acceptance, you'll die from their rejection. But I want you to hear this. Even when others don't choose you, God chooses you. You don't need God's approval when you have God's anointing. And that's what David experienced. You know what I love about David? Y'all heard of David and Goliath? Whew. Y'all, David goes out to check on his brothers. This is literally after he's anointed as king. Check this. This is so good. I'm going to throw something. Listen. This is so good. You should be paying me money for this. Check this out. Listen. David goes out to war because his father sends him basically as a lunch errand boy. And he says, go feed your brothers, go check on them. And by the way, it's a 15-mile walk. They didn't have Ubers and planes back then. So he shows up to the battle line, and his brother Eliab, who's the oldest, criticizes him. Bro, what you doing out here, cuz? That's the Griff translation. What are you doing out here? You're an evil, arrogant dude. You just wanted to come hang out and see the battle. And all David asked was, hey, what happens if somebody slays this dude that's going after our king? That's all I asked. And then David goes up to Saul and says, hey, I'll go out and take care of this. And Saul's like, bro, you're just a youth. You ever been told that before? You ever been told, just wait till you get to the real world so it demeans where you're at now? Adults, we got to watch that. David is told, you're just a youth. You know what he said? Saul, I can imagine him just being this confident guy with his chest out. Just did 3,500 push-ups. Saul, God rescued me from the bear and the lion. That same God that rescued me from the bear and the lion, he's going to rescue me from this cat. Saul goes, the Lord be with you. And in the original language, it's more like, good luck. I want you to hear this. David is criticized by his oldest brother. David is criticized by the king of God's people. And yet David kept walking towards the giant. He kept walking towards the battle line. He kept walking towards the fight. Why? Because he was so confident that God chose him. Students, I want you to hear this. God's approval is greater than man's approval. And just like Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther himself said, when God has something for you, nobody can stand against it. Nobody. Here's number 3. People's opinions of you can't mess up the opportunities God has chosen for you. People's opinions of you can't mess up the opportunities God has chosen for you. Let's look at verse 12. Verse 12 says, so Jesse sent for him, and he had beautiful eyes and a healthy, handsome appearance. Then the Lord said, anoint him, for he is the one. So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully on David from that day forward. People's opinions of you cannot mess up the opportunities God has chosen for you. David was anointed. He was set apart for divine purpose to be used by God. And students, y'all know David's resume? Check this out. David is in the lineage of Jesus. How many people in his lineage were overlooked and casted out? David killed bears and lions with his bare hands and overcame a 7'8" Goliath. Y'all know why he had 5 stones? Because it is reported from scholars that Goliath may have had 4 brothers. Just imagine 4 other ugly beast mode looking basketball goals out there that he had to take down if he didn't take out Goliath. And by the way, all my hunters in this room, you feed a deer for a year and then you shoot it and think you're manly. Go kill one with your bare hands. Anyway, just joking. I don't hunt. David became king. Check this out. David wrote 75 of the 150 Psalms in the Bible, and he had the power and spirit of God on him. And he was criticized. Y'all, David even had a huge moral failure. And he repented, and God restored him. Look at me. I want you to hear this. You might feel overlooked. You might even think your sin and your past and your shame count you out and disqualify you. But no one else can disqualify you when God already looks at you and sees Jesus, and he's the only one that can qualify you. Students, I get it. If you feel overlooked in here, if you feel like everyone's looking at everybody else but you, and you just feel like, I feel like there's nothing here for me, go back to King David. Because even King David, in him being chosen, still battled doubts. I'm convinced David battled depression. I think that some Psalms, he's like, God, you ascend the mountains. In the very next text, he's like, where the heck are you? Where are you, God? God, I worship you. You're my king. You're my refuge. You train my hands for battle. I'm going to lose. You see, you can be chosen and still feel crippled. But I want you to know something, students. Every single one of us in this room, and I'll close with this. Every single one of us in this room, we feel, don't we? We struggle. We hurt. And it's okay to feel those feelings. Feelings are validated. But I want you to hear this. Feelings are great companions, but they're terrible leaders. You can't always go off what you feel. So if you were to take these principles of appearance does not mean that it shows what people are really like or what their value. If you understand that God's approval is greater than man's approval, and if you realize that people's opinion of you can't mess up the opportunity God has chosen for you, I guarantee you as a teenager in this world, as hard as it is to live as a Christian, you'll be able to walk confidently. Because look at me, you ripped off the label of overlooked and you put on the label of chosen. You are, as my boy said last night, you are a chosen race. Rip off overlooked and embrace the truth that you're chosen. Let's pray. And with heads bowed, eyes closed, and hearts open, I just want you to reflect for a moment. I want you to think about a couple of the things I'm saying. And I want you to hear me say, I know some of us in this room, man, we just feel like we don't have it all together. We compare ourselves to somebody else up the road. We compare our social medias to other people's social medias. We compare our academics and athletics to other people. And I want you to know, God has uniquely wired and designed you to be you. Literally, God took divine time to make you. Get your head around that for a second. You were not a quick make. You were legitimately designed in divine time. Just like David. And I want you to know, students, man, I know that breaks your heart sometimes when you feel like nobody sees you. And there have been seasons in my life where I felt like nobody saw me. But when I realized that my identity is not wrapped up in what people see, my identity is wrapped up in who God sees, that changes everything. So as teenagers this morning, I want you to rephrase how you talk to yourself. Don't tell yourself you're worthless. Tell yourself you were worth the cross to Jesus. Don't tell yourself you're nothing. No, because God gave you a name. Don't tell yourself that I should just give up. No, tell yourself you have a God-designed purpose. Don't tell yourself you're overlooked. Why? Because God sees you. So in this moment, what I want to do, I want to encourage you. I'm going to pray for you, and we're going to worship. And I want to encourage you to worship the God who created your soul. Your identity is not in the approval of others. It is in the affection and love that Jesus has for you when he died upon that cross. If you want to know who approves of you, look at the cross. Do not let the cross and the blood that was shed there become so cliche that it no longer changes you. If that man died a 6.5-hour brutal death, gasping for air to save you, does that not make you someone? For those who criticize you, for those who overlook you, for those naysayers, for the people who critique you, for the people who don't understand you, there is one that does, and his name is Jesus. God, I pray in the name of Jesus right now, Father, as we close out this morning. Sometimes when it comes to identity theft, sometimes we try to replace our identity with things and thoughts that have been said to us when really they don't matter. And God, I pray that you would give us the reality that while Jesse and his brothers saw a shepherd boy, God saw a king. While people in this world can label us, the only status that matters is that we're loved by you.